It begins with a silence you have never heard before. We spend our entire lives running. From the moment we are born, a stopwatch starts ticking in the back of our minds. You hear it in the rhythm of your own heart. You see it in the lengthening shadows of the afternoon. You feel it in the urgency of your ambitions, the desperation of your loves, the quiet panic that grips you on a Sunday evening when the sun begins to set. We are creatures defined by our limits. We are defined by the end. Every choice you have ever made to study this, to marry them, to build that, to say I love you, was given weight by the fact that you might run out of time to do it. Scarcity creates value. A diamond is precious because it is rare. A life is precious because it is brief. But imagine, just for tonight, that the scarcity is gone. Imagine you are offered a cup, dark, heavy, cold iron. Inside is a liquid that looks like liquid starlight, and you drink it. At first, you feel nothing. No thunder, no lightning. But then, you look at the clock on the wall. The second hand is sweeping around the face, just as it always has. Tick, tick. But suddenly, the sound means nothing to you. The connection between the ticking and your pulse has been severed. That anxiety, that low-level hum of dread that has vibrated in your chest since you were a child, simply stops. It is like a refrigerator humming in the background of your life, suddenly unplugging. The silence is deafening. You realize, with a jolt that sits somewhere between ecstasy and terror, that you are never going to die. This is not a superhero story. You cannot fly. You cannot lift cars. You are simply durable. The cells in your body have stopped aging. The telomeres have stopped shortening. The biological fuse has been snipped. Tonight, we are going to walk through the consequences of this wish. We are going to explore the psychology of the infinite. Because when we say, I want to live forever, we are usually thinking about the first 100 years. We are thinking about seeing flying cars and curing diseases. We are thinking about the party. We rarely think about the hangover. We rarely think about what happens to the human mind when it is forced to endure 1 billion sunrises. What happens to meaning when there is no end? German philosopher Martin Heidegger famously said that humans are being towards death. He meant that our entire existence, our very structure of being, is shaped by the knowledge that we will cease to be. It is the horizon that allows us to orient ourselves. So if you remove the horizon, do you become free? Or do you become lost? Let us step into this thought experiment. Let us swallow the elixir. Let us close the door on mortality and throw away the key. You are now the witness, the observer, the anchor. The world will turn. The stars will shift. Civilizations will rise like smoke and dissipate just as quickly. But you will remain. How does it feel in those first few moments? It feels like taking a deep breath after holding it for a decade. It feels like the ultimate permission. You look at your to-do list and you laugh. Why rush to write the book? You have 1,000 years. Why rush to find love? You have an eternity. The pressure evaporates. You walk out into the street, and the faces of the people rushing by look different to you. They look frantic. They look like insects buzzing before a storm. They are obsessed with saving time, spending time, wasting time. But you are no longer in the economy of time. You have left the market. You are wealthy in a currency that no one else possesses. The first night of your immortality is the most peaceful sleep you have ever had. The fear of missing out is gone. The fear of failure is gone. Because if you fail, you can just try again, and again, and again. But as you sleep, deep in the architecture of your dreams, a question begins to form. A small dark seed planted in the soil of your subconscious. If I cannot lose, can I ever truly win? If I cannot end, can I ever truly begin? Welcome to the forever. The first 100 years are the honeymoon. This is the era of the polymath. It is the era of hunger. Think of all the things you told yourself you would do if you had the time. You wanted to learn French. You wanted to master the violin. You wanted to understand quantum mechanics. You wanted to read every book in the Library of Congress. Now you begin. The first decade is a frenzy of acquisition. You devour knowledge. You are like a child let loose in a candy store where the doors have been locked from the outside. You gorge yourself. You spend 5 years living in Paris, perfecting your accent until even the locals cannot distinguish you. Then you move to Tokyo. You spend 10 years there, learning the intricate etiquette of the tea ceremony, the silence of the Zen gardens. You master the sword. You master the calligraphy brush. You realize how limited the mortal brain is by the scarcity of focus. Mortals have to choose. I will be a doctor, or I will be an artist. They cannot be both. They do not have the lifespan to master two contradictions. But you become everything. By year 40, you are a master architect. By year 60, you are a concert pianist. By year 80, you are a surgeon who has saved 1,000 lives. You feel a sense of godhood. This is what Nietzsche whispered about the Bermensch, the overman. You have transcended the petty limitations of the biological animal. You are smarter, faster, more cultured than anyone you meet. You begin to view mortals with a strange mix of pity and affection. They seem so unfinished. They are rough drafts of human beings. They stumble through their lives, making mistakes they don't have time to fix, hurting people they don't have time to heal. You become a guide, a mentor. People flock to you, though they don't know your secret. They just sense a calmness in you, an ancient stability. You are the old soul in the young body. You give advice that spans generations. You see the patterns they cannot see. This is the golden age of your immortality. It feels like a blessing. You are exploring the surface area of the human experience, and you are finding that it is vast and beautiful. You travel. You walk the Great Wall of China not as a tourist, but as a pilgrim, taking a month to walk its length. You sail across the Pacific in a small boat, unafraid of the storms, because you know the ocean cannot claim you. You sit on the edge of active volcanoes and watch the earth bleed fire. Curiosity becomes your religion. You want to see it all. You want to taste every fruit, climb every peak, speak every tongue. But slowly, subtly, a shift occurs. It happens around year 90. You are sitting in a cafe in Vienna. You have lived here before, 30 years ago. You ordered this same coffee. You watched this same sunset. And you realize you are bored. It is a terrifying realization. You have mastered the piano, but now the music all sounds predictable. You have learned 7 languages, but people say the same things in all of them. I love you. I hate you. I'm hungry. I'm scared. The novelty begins to wear off. You realize that human culture, for all its variety, is actually quite repetitive. There are only so many stories we can tell. There are only so many ways to fall in love. There are only so many ways to break a heart. You start to predict what people will say before they say it. You start to see the strings on the puppets. The Greek myths warned us about this. The gods on Olympus were immortal, and what was their defining trait? Boredom. They meddled in human lives not because they cared, but because they needed entertainment. They needed drama. They needed to feel something. You start to understand Zeus. You start to understand why he would start a war just to see what would happen. And then there is the issue of connection. In this first century, you have fallen in love. Maybe 2 or 3 times. Deep, earth-shattering love. But you have also buried them. The first funeral is the hardest. It destroys you. You stand in the rain, looking at the fresh earth, and you feel a guilt so heavy it almost cracks your ribs. Why you? Why do you get to stay and they have to go? You promise to love them forever, but you realize too late that forever meant two very different things to the two of you. To them, it meant until I die. To you, it meant forever. You watch their skin wrinkle while yours remains smooth. You watch their minds fade while yours remains sharp. You become their nurse, their guardian, and finally, their mourner. By the end of the 1st century, you make a silent vow. Never again. You cannot bear the weight of another goodbye. The pain of the 1st century is the pain of the discrepancy. You are a statue walking among flowers. The flowers are beautiful, but they wilt in a day. You remain. So, as the century turns, as the dates on the calendar shift from 2000s to 2100s, you begin to pull back. You stop seeking mastery. You stop seeking novelty. You stop trying to be the hero of the story. You retreat to the edges. You buy a house in a quiet place. You stop making new friends. You settle in. The wonder is gone. The curiosity has been fed, and now you are full. Now you are waiting. But waiting for what? This is where the real work of immortality begins. The party is over. The guests have gone home. The confetti is on the floor. And it is just you. And the silence. And the clock that isn't ticking. There is a neurological theory called the oddball effect. It states that the brain only records new information. When you are young, everything is new. The color blue, the taste of a lemon, the feeling of falling. Your brain is writing furiously on blank pages, and so childhood feels endless. A single summer afternoon at age 7 feels like a dynasty. But as you age, the novelty fades. The brain stops writing. It says, I have seen this before. I have done this before. It compresses duplicate files. This is why time seems to speed up as you get older. Now, imagine that compression applied to 1,000 years. Welcome to the second era of your immortality. You have stopped looking at the calendar. Why would you? The calendar is a tool for scheduling endings. It tells you when the rent is due, when the project is finished, when the holiday begins. But your life has no deadlines. Monday is Tuesday, is Friday, is Sunday. The days lose their names. They become simply light and dark. You enter a state that psychologists call the long now. In the mortal world, you measured your life in hours. I have to be at work at 9. I have to meet her at 6. Now, you measure your life in decades. You decide to read a book. You sit down in your chair. You read the first chapter. You look up and realize that 3 days have passed. You didn't eat. You didn't sleep. You simply drifted because there was no biological alarm clock to pull you out of the trance. This is the first major shift in your consciousness, the loss of urgency. Urgency is the friction that keeps mortal life warm. It is the fear that you are running out of time that makes you hustle, makes you create, makes you speak. Without urgency, you become like water in a flat basin. You do not flow. You sit. You might spend 10 years just watching a tree grow in your backyard. You watch the seasons cycle like a breathing lung. Inhale, spring. Exhale, autumn. Inhale, exhale. It becomes hypnotic. You are no longer a participant in the world. You are part of the scenery. You stop speaking as much. Language feels too slow. Words are clumsy containers for the things you have seen. Why try to explain the color of a sunset to someone who will only see it for 70 years? They don't have the reference points. They haven't seen the sunset 1,000,000 times. They haven't seen the sun turn a slightly different shade of red because of the volcanic ash from an eruption 3 centuries ago. You become the quiet observer. And then the memory begins to blur. The human brain was not designed to store infinity. It has a storage limit. To make room for the new centuries, You have to overwrite the old ones. You realize with a sudden, cold panic that you cannot remember your mother's face. You know who she was. You know her name. You know she loved you. But the image? The sound of her voice? Gone. Overwritten by the face of a lover you had in the year 2300. Overwritten by the face of a stranger you saw on a train in the year 2800. You try to hold on to the memories, but they are like sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster they slip through your fingers. This is the tragedy of the middle period. You are still human enough to want to remember, but you are too vast to keep it all. You start keeping journals. Not small diaries, but warehouses full of them. You write down everything. Today I ate an apple. It was crisp. Today I saw a bird with a blue wing. You are terrified of losing the texture of your life. But eventually, you stop reading the journals. There are too many of them. Millions of pages of a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. Who was that person who lived in New York in 2024? That wasn't you. That was a child. That was an embryo. You begin to dissociate from your own history. You are not a continuous narrative anymore. You are an anthology of short stories that just happen to share the same protagonist. And then the boredom changes. In the first century, boredom was an annoyance. It was ennui. It was the feeling of a rainy Sunday afternoon. But now, deep in the millennium, boredom becomes something else. It becomes stasis. You have seen every plot twist. You have seen every political revolution. You watch a dictator rise on the news. He gives a speech about a new order. He waves his fist. The people cheer. You sigh. You saw this guy in 1930. You saw him in 2050. You saw him in 2400. He wears a different uniform. He uses different slang, but he is the same guy. The same ego. The same fragile masculinity. The same inevitable collapse. You realize that history is not a line moving forward. History is a circle. It is a wheel of suffering and hope that turns over and over again. Nietzsche called this the eternal recurrence. The idea that everything has happened before and will happen again. For mortals, this is a philosophical concept. For you, it is a Tuesday. You stop voting. You stop protesting. You stop caring about the current thing because you know that the current thing will be forgotten in 10 years. You take the long view, but the long view is lonely. The long view is cold. You are like a man watching a movie he has seen 500 times. You can mouth the lines along with the actors. You know exactly when the car explodes. You know exactly when the lovers kiss. Can you still enjoy the movie? Can you still cry when the dog dies, even though you know the dog dies in every single screening? This is the great test of your sanity. Can you find meaning in repetition? Most immortals, if they were others, would go mad here. This is the danger zone. This is where the mind snaps. The sensory deprivation of the familiar. To survive, you have to change your relationship with meaning. Mortals find meaning in outcome. They do things to achieve a result. They build a house to live in it. They write a book to be famous. But you cannot care about outcomes. Because all outcomes eventually turn to dust. The house will fall. The book will be forgotten. So you have to find meaning in the process. You spend 50 years carving a single piece of marble. Not because you want to finish the statue, but because you like the feeling of the chisel hitting the stone. You spend 20 years learning to whistle a single bird call perfectly, just for the joy of the sound. You become a Zen master, not by choice, but by necessity. You learn to live entirely in the immediate sensation, the texture of the velvet chair, the taste of the cold water, the warmth of the sun on your hand. You stop living for tomorrow. You stop living for yesterday. You live in the eternal now. But even this piece comes with a price. Because as you detach from the outcomes of the world, you detach from the people in it. They start to look like mayflies to you, born in the morning, dead by evening. They rush around frantic, screaming about things that do not matter. The stock market crashed. My girlfriend left me. I lost my job. You want to shake them. You want to say it doesn't matter. None of it matters. Just breathe. But you can't, because to them, it does matter. To them, the broken heart is the end of the world. And you remember vaguely, like a dream, that it used to be the end of the world for you too. You miss that pain. You miss the stakes. You begin to crave the one thing you cannot have. You crave the end, not because you are suicidal, but because you want the story to have a point. A sentence without a period is just noise. A melody that never resolves is just anxiety. You start to fantasize about mortality the way a prisoner fantasizes about the ocean. You look at the gray hair of an old man on the bus with jealousy. You look at the wrinkles on a grandmother's face and you see them as badges of honor. They are finishing the race. You are stuck running on the treadmill. Time has stopped being a river. It has become a swamp, thick, heavy, stagnant, and you are wading through it, chest deep, waiting for a current that will never come. This is the reality of the second era. You have conquered death, but in doing so, you have conquered life. And now, as the sun sets on your 500th year, you turn your gaze away from the mirror. You turn it toward the world you have left behind. You turn it toward the people you loved, and the sorrow hits you. Not the sharp, stabbing sorrow of the funeral, but the long, dull ache of the survivor. There is a specific kind of loneliness that has no name. It is not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It is the loneliness of being the only person in the room who remembers the world as it was. You are walking down a street in London, or perhaps it is New York, or perhaps it is a city that does not yet exist. The year is 3500. The buildings are made of glass and living light. The people speak a dialect that sounds like singing. They move with a grace that feels alien to you, and you realize you are a foreigner in your own home. You look for the coffee shop where you met your first love. It is gone. It is a crater, or a vertical garden, or a shrine to a god you do not recognize. You look for the park where you played as a child. It is buried under layers of concrete and steel. This is the sorrow of geography. We attach our memories to places. That is the corner where I kissed her. That is the house where I was born. The physical world acts as a hard drive for our identity. But when you live forever, you outlive the hard drive. The city you loved is not just changed, it is erased. It has been built over, destroyed, rebuilt, and destroyed again. You are walking on a graveyard of cities. You are the only one who knows that here, beneath this Hyperloop station, there used to be a bakery that smelled of cinnamon in the winter of 1999. You become a ghost. Not because you are dead, but because you are haunting a world that has moved on without you. And then, there are the people. In the beginning, you tried to keep loving them. You told yourself that love was worth the pain of loss. You married. You had children. You watched those children grow up, have their own children, and then you watched them die. Have you ever held your own child's hand as they took their last breath of old age? Have you ever looked into the eyes of your great-great-great-granddaughter and realized she looks exactly like the wife you buried 3 centuries ago? It breaks you. It is a biological violation. Parents are not meant to bury their descendants. You are meant to be the ancestor on the wall, the faded portrait. You are not meant to be the one sitting by the bed, young and strong, while your lineage withers. After the 3rd or 4th family, something inside you snaps. A protective mechanism kicks in. A callus forms over the soul. You stop getting married. You stop having children. You stop learning names. Why learn a name when it will be carved on a stone in the blink of an eye? Why memorize the color of their eyes when you know those eyes will close? You start to treat mortals like pets. You are kind to them. You pet them. You feed them. But you do not give them your heart. You keep a distance. You become the cool aunt or the mysterious stranger. You drift into town, stay for a decade, and leave before anyone notices that you haven't aged a day. This is the sorrow of detachment. You become an emotional vampire, but in reverse. Instead of taking their blood, you refuse to give them your warmth. You realize that intimacy requires a shared fate. To truly love someone, you must be in the same boat as them, heading toward the same waterfall. But you are on the shore, and they are in the boat, and the current is fast. You wave goodbye, over and over again, and then the culture itself begins to die. Language is a living thing. It evolves. It mutates. In the year 4000, no one speaks English anymore, or Spanish, or Mandarin. Those languages are dead. They are studied by archaeologists. You are the last native speaker of the 21st century. When you speak to yourself in the shower, you are speaking a ghost tone. You can learn the new languages, of course. You have the time, but you will always speak them with an accent. You will always miss the slang, the nuance, the jokes. You realize that you cannot explain who you are to anyone anymore, because to explain who you are, you have to explain the world that made you. You have to explain rock and roll. You have to explain the internet. You have to explain democracy. And to the people of the year 4000, those things are as ancient and irrelevant as the pharaohs are to us. You are a living museum exhibit, but the museum is closed. This brings us to the deepest sorrow of all, the sorrow of witnessing. You are the memory of the world. You remember the mistakes they made last time. You see a young politician rousing the crowd with hate speech, and you think, I remember 1939. You see a scientist playing with a new virus, and you think, I remember 2020. You try to warn them. You stand up and say, stop. I have seen where this leads, but they do not listen. Why would they? You are just one man. You are eccentric. You are old-fashioned, so you watch them make the same mistakes. You watch the war start. You watch the bombs fall. You watch the Library of Alexandria burn again and again and again. And you realize that wisdom is useless if no one wants to hear it. You realize that human nature does not change. Technology changes. Clothes change. But the greed, the fear, the tribalism, it is etched into the DNA. And you are the only one who has to live through the consequences of every cycle. Nietzsche spoke of the weight of greatest weight, the burden of remembering. You are carrying the grief of 1,000 generations on your back. Every city you see is a tomb. Every field is a battlefield. Every song is an echo of a song you heard a millennium ago. You start to envy the dead. The dead are lucky. They get to rest. They get to be part of history. You have to be history. And so, you begin to retreat further. You leave the cities entirely. You go to the mountains. You go to the desert. You seek places that do not change. You seek the stone, the sand, the stars, because only the stars are old enough to be your friends. You lie on your back in the Atacama Desert, looking up at the Milky Way, and for the first time in centuries, you feel a connection. The stars are burning. You are burning. The stars are lonely. You are lonely. The stars will eventually die, and you close your eyes and wish, with every fiber of your being, that you could join them. There is a paradox at the heart of immortality that no one tells you about. It is the ship of Theseus paradox, applied to the human soul. If you replace every plank of wood in a ship over the course of a journey, is it still the same ship when it arrives at the port? If you replace every cell in your body, every memory in your mind, every belief in your heart over the course of 10,000 years, are you still you? Or are you just a vessel that happens to carry the same name? By the year 5000, you have reached the saturation point. The human brain, biologically, is a masterpiece of storage. It can hold petabytes of information, but it was designed to hold 70 years of data, not 5,000. So the overwrite begins. You wake up one morning and you cannot remember your mother's voice. You know that she existed. You know she was kind. But the sensory file, the sound of her laugh, the smell of her perfume is corrupted. It has been overwritten by the sound of a robotic drone you heard in the 41st century. You try to panic, but you can't. Because you have panicked about this before, 2,000 years ago, and you have forgotten that panic too. You become a palimpsest. In ancient times, when parchment was scarce, scribes would scrape the ink off old scrolls to write new texts on top of them. But the old ink would leave a faint ghost trace, a shadow of the words beneath. Your mind is a scroll that has been scraped and rewritten 1,000 times. You have a vague feeling that you once loved strawberries, but you can't remember eating them. You have a vague feeling that you were once a soldier, or was it a pacifist? You remember holding a gun, but you also remember protesting against guns. Which life was that? Which version of you believed those things? This is the fragmentation of identity. Mortals define themselves by their consistency. I am a person who loves jazz. I am a person who hates cold weather. But you? You have loved jazz, and then you have hated jazz, and then you have loved it again in a cycle that spans centuries. You have lived in the Arctic and loved the cold. You have lived in the desert and loved the heat. You have been a saint. You have spent 100 years washing the feet of lepers. You have been a sinner. You have spent 100 years drinking wine and gambling in the neon slums of a floating city. You have been everything, and therefore you are nothing. You start to lose the ability to say I. The word I implies a singular, coherent narrative. But you are not a narrative. You are an anthology. You are a library where the librarian has died and the books are falling off the shelves. You stop having opinions. When someone asks, "Do you believe in God?" you say nothing, because you have believed in 1,000 gods, and you have watched them all die. You have been an atheist, a zealot, a mystic, a nihilist. You realize that truth is just a fashion trend that lasts a few centuries. So you become silent. You become the hollow man. And then the nostalgia sickness sets in. Because your brain cannot hold the specific details, it starts to compress your memories into vibes, into atmospheres. You don't remember the specific day you fell in love in Paris in 1920. You just remember a feeling of gold. You don't remember the war you fought in 2500. You just remember a feeling of red. Your internal world becomes an abstract painting. It is no longer a crisp 4K movie. It is a Rothko painting. Broad strokes of color. Deep washes of emotion without context. You are walking down a street, and suddenly you are hit by a wave of grief so profound it drops you to your knees. But you don't know why. Is it for a dog you lost? A wife? A civilization? The source of the pain is gone. Only the pain remains. A phantom limb ache for a limb you forgot you ever had. This is the price of the infinite. You become a haunted house where the ghosts are nameless. To survive this, you have to undergo a radical transformation. You have to stop being human. Humanity is built on memory. Relationships are built on shared history. Remember when we did that? But you have no shared history with anyone. You have outlived every witness to your life. So you begin to drift away from the concept of personality. You stop trying to be John or Sarah or David. Those are just costumes. You become pure consciousness. You become like a camera lens. The lens does not judge what it sees. The lens does not remember the photo it took yesterday. The lens is just an open eye, receiving the light of the present moment. You sit on a mountaintop for 500 years. You don't think. You don't remember. You don't plan. You just are. People from the valley below might come up to see you. They call you a god, or a demon, or an oracle. They ask you questions. What is the meaning of life? Will the harvest be good? You look at them, and it takes you a long time to understand their words. Their language is fast and chirpy, like birdsong. You answer them in riddles, not because you are trying to be mysterious, but because the truth is too big to fit into their tiny sentences. They ask, "Is there hope?" And you want to say, "Hope is a function of time. Hope implies a future that is better than the present. But I have seen the future. It is just the present repeated." But you don't say that. You just smile. A sad, tired smile. And they go away thinking they have been blessed. But deep down in the basement of your mind, there is still a small, flickering candle. The remnant of the person you used to be. The part of you that remembers the smell of rain on asphalt. The part of you that remembers the taste of a peach. The part of you that wants to go home. But where is home? Home is a time, not a place, and that time is gone. You are a time traveler who is stranded in the future, and the time machine is broken. You realize that the ultimate punishment of hell is not fire. It is not torture. The ultimate punishment is memory without context. It is feeling the love without the lover. It is feeling the regret without the mistake. And so, you make a choice. You decide to stop remembering. You decide to let go of the last few threads of your humanity. You decide to become the ocean. You stop fighting the current. You stop trying to hold on to the names, the faces, the dates. You let the library burn. And in that burning, you find a strange, terrible peace. The peace of the void, the peace of the stone. You have finally become what you feared the most. You have become timeless. And then the stars go out. It does not happen quickly. It takes trillions of years. The era of life, the brief, chaotic flash where biology and emotion existed, was a blink. It was a rounding error in the lifespan of the cosmos. Then came the era of black holes, a long, cold funeral procession where gravity swallowed the light. And now, even the black holes are evaporating. Proton decay sets in. Matter itself unspools, dissolving into radiation. The geometry of space begins to flatten. Entropy has won. The universe is a cold, dark, expanding tomb. Except for you. You are the only object left in existence. You are the reference point for all of reality. If you move your hand to the left, you define left. If you breathe, you define time. If you think, you define meaning. You are the keeper of the flame, but there is nothing left to illuminate. This is the final twist of the wish. You asked to live forever, but you assumed the world would live forever with you. You assumed the stage would always be there for you to act upon, but the theater has been demolished, and you are standing in the rubble. The boredom is gone. The grief is gone. The madness is gone. There is only the question. Why? Why were you kept? Why did the laws of physics discard everything else? Every galaxy, every nebula, every atom, but keep you? Are you a punishment? A mistake? A cosmic glitch? Or are you a seed? You close your eyes, or the memory of eyes, and you look inside, and you realize that you are carrying something. Hidden in the static of your infinite memory, Buried beneath the layers of forgotten centuries are the blueprints. You remember the atomic structure of carbon. You remember the mathematical ratio of a spiral galaxy. You remember the frequency of the color blue. You remember the feeling of a mother's love. You are not a survivor. You are an arc. The universe collapsed everything into you so that you could carry it across the gap. The previous reality didn't die. It was uploaded into you. You are the backup drive for existence. And suddenly, the loneliness vanishes. You are not alone. You are pregnant with the next big bang. You understand your purpose now. The purpose of immortality was not to enjoy the party. It was to be the bridge. You are the singularity. You are the dense point of matter that will explode into the next universe. You feel a pressure building, a pressure greater than grief, greater than joy. It is the pressure of creation. You have to let it go. You have to sacrifice the self to birth the everything. To start the clock again, you must destroy the clockmaker. And so, you wait. You wait for the silence to become perfect. You wait for the void to be ready. You take one final breath of the old air. You say goodbye to the memory of the human you once were. You say goodbye to the name you carried for an eternity. And then, you open your mouth. And you speak.